You remember the moment. Maybe not consciously, but your body remembers. You were happy, genuinely happy. Maybe you had just won something. Maybe you were laughing with friends. Maybe you achieved a small victory, the kind that makes a child's eyes light up from the inside. And then you looked at your dad, and you saw something in his eyes that didn't make sense. It wasn't pride. It wasn't shared joy. It was something darker, something that made your happiness wither instantly. It was irritation, discomfort, maybe even something you didn't have the vocabulary to name back then, but that now, as an adult, you recognize. It was envy. The green-eyed monster, as Shakespeare called it. Carl Jung, the pioneering Swiss psychiatrist and psychoanalyst, spent decades studying this phenomenon. Fathers who can't tolerate the happiness of their own children. And what he discovered will completely change the way you understand your childhood and the patterns you carry to this day. In the next few minutes, I'm going to show you why your dad reacted that way. I'm going to reveal the wound inside him that made your joy unbearable. And I'm going to show you how this dynamic shaped your ability to be happy even now, decades after you left his house. But before we dive deeper, I need you to understand something fundamental. What I'm about to say isn't to make you hate your father. It's to help you finally understand what happened, and understanding is the first step towards setting yourself free. Let's start with an uncomfortable truth. Not every father is capable of loving their child the way that child needs to be loved. This isn't a judgment, it's a clinical observation. Some people become parents without having resolved their own wounds, and when you're an unhealed adult trying to raise a child, you inevitably transfer your pain. Jung called this the intergenerational transmission of trauma. The wound your father carries wasn't born with him. It was passed down by his father, who received it from the father before him, and so on, for generations. But that doesn't mean you have to continue the chain. Now let's get into the specific mechanism. Why did your happiness specifically bother your father so much? The answer lies in something Jung called the shadow. The shadow is everything a person rejects in themselves, all the parts they've decided are unacceptable, all the desires they've suppressed, all the emotions they've buried. It's the unconscious repository of our disowned selves. For many men of your father's generation, happiness was one of those rejected things. Think about the context in which your father grew up. He was probably taught that men don't show emotion, that joy is frivolous, that life is hard and you need to be harder, that celebrating is a waste of time, that happiness is for the weak. These messages don't just disappear. They go into the shadow, and there they fester. They transform into resentment, into bitterness, into envy of anyone who can feel what he was forbidden to feel. And then you were born, a child who laughed for no reason, who rejoiced in small things, who celebrated silly wins as if they were monumental achievements, who felt happiness in a pure way, without filter, without shame. You were everything he was taught not to be, and that was unbearable. Not because there was something wrong with you, but because you were a constant mirror of everything he had lost. Every time you showed joy, you reminded him of a capacity he murdered within himself decades ago. You were living proof that it was possible to be happy, and that made his unhappiness a choice, not a destiny. That's the truth that most people never understand about fathers who can't tolerate the happiness of their children. It's not about the child. It's about the father's inability to confront his own pain. But the child doesn't know that. The child, especially when young, only knows one thing: when I'm happy. Something bad happens. Let me show you how this manifests in practice. You come home excited about a good grade at school. Instead of celebrating with you, your dad finds something to criticize. It could have been better. Why didn't you get an A+? Your cousins get better grades. You're laughing with your friends. Your dad interrupts. He tells you to do some chore. He complains about the noise. He gives you that disapproving look you know so well. You achieve something you wanted badly. Instead of celebrating, your dad minimizes it. That's nothing. Just wait until you face the real world. I don't know why you're making such a big deal out of it. You're simply in a good mood for no specific reason. and your dad finds a way to ruin it. A criticism, a snide comment, an impossible task. Anything to take the sparkle out of your eyes. Over time, you learn, not consciously. Your primitive brain, the one that exists to ensure survival, makes a simple connection. Happiness equals punishment. Happiness equals rejection. Happiness equals danger. And you start to sabotage your own joy before anyone else does it for you. Does this sound familiar? If so, you're not alone. And what I'm going to show you now is how this pattern manifests in adult life. First sign. You have difficulty enjoying good moments. When something good happens, instead of celebrating, you wait for the other shoe to drop. You look for the hidden problem. You can't relax into happiness because you've learned that happiness is temporary and always followed by pain. This isn't pessimism, it's programming. Your nervous system has been conditioned to associate joy with danger, so it keeps you on alert even when there's no threat. Second sign. You self-sabotage when things are going well. Relationship too good. You pick a fight. Career progressing? You make an unexplainable mistake. Period of peace. You create drama out of nowhere. This seems crazy when you look at it from the outside, but it makes perfect sense when you understand the programming. You've learned that happiness is dangerous, so when you get too close to it, a part of you pulls the emergency brake. It's safer to be in a low level of constant unhappiness than to risk the fall from real happiness. Third sign. You feel guilt when you're happy. Not a rational guilt. A deep, visceral guilt that makes no logical sense. You achieve something good, and instead of joy, you feel like you don't deserve it. You're having fun, and suddenly you remember all the people who are suffering. You're at peace, and you feel like you should be doing something productive. This guilt isn't yours. It was installed. Every time your father punished your happiness, he was teaching you that joy is wrong, that you don't have the right to feel good, that your function is to work, to suffer, to endure, never to celebrate. Fourth sign. You attract partners who replicate the pattern. Unconsciously, you seek out people who react to your happiness the same way your father reacted. Partners who get uncomfortable when you're doing well, who find subtle ways to diminish your victories, that seem to prefer you sad or neutral rather than genuinely joyful. That's no coincidence. It's your unconscious seeking the familiar. You were programmed to associate love with that specific pattern, so when you find someone or something that allows you to be happy, something feels wrong. Something just feels off. There's a lack of chemistry. There's a lack of intensity. There's a lack of that familiar tension that your nervous system recognizes as love. If you recognized yourself in any of these signs, I need you to understand something crucial before we continue. None of this is your fault. You were a child. You were doing what children do, being happy. Your dad's reaction was about him, not about you. You didn't do anything wrong. You never did anything wrong. But now you're an adult. And as an adult, you have the power to rewrite that programming. Before we talk about how to do that, I need to explain something that Carl Jung considered essential. The wound of your father. Understanding his wound isn't about excusing the behavior. It's for you to stop carrying a guilt that was never yours to bear. Your dad, probably, had a father just like him. Or worse. His generation was raised with even more brutal messages about masculinity. Men don't cry. Men don't show weakness. Men work, provide, endure. Joy, unadulterated happiness, is a luxury. Emotion is a defect. These messages created emotionally mutilated men. Men who buried their capacity for joy so deeply that they forgot it even existed. Men who became incapable of tolerating in others what they can't access in themselves. Jung spoke about this in terms of shadow projection. The shadow, in Jungian psychology, is the unconscious aspect of the personality that the conscious ego does not identify in itself. In other words, it's the stuff we deny in ourselves. What you can't accept in yourself, you persecute in others. Your dad couldn't accept his own capacity for happiness, so he persecuted yours. Each time he destroyed your joy, he was unconsciously trying to destroy a reflection of something he himself had lost. It was a distorted way of alleviating his own pain. If I can't be happy, you can't either. That is tragic, for him and for you. But his tragedy doesn't need to be your perpetual sentence. Now let's talk about healing, because understanding is important, but it's not enough. You need practical tools to undo decades of programming. If you've made it this far, it shows you're taking this process seriously. Before continuing, I want to tell you that this channel is dedicated exactly to this, to helping people understand and heal childhood wounds. Subscribe so you don't miss the next videos. Now, the tools. The first tool is what Jung called conscious witnessing. This means starting to observe without judgment when you sabotage your own happiness. When something good happens and you automatically look for the problem. When you're joyful and suddenly feel guilty. When you're about to celebrate and an internal voice tells you that you don't deserve it. Don't try to change anything yet. Just observe, note, bring it to consciousness. What you don't perceive, you can't change. The simple act of noting these patterns already begins to weaken the power they have over you. The second tool is reparenting. This may seem strange at first, but it's one of the most powerful techniques that exists to heal childhood wounds. The idea is simple. The child inside of you still exists. He or she is still waiting for the approval that never came. He or she is still asking permission to be happy. The work of reparenting is for you as an adult to give that child what your dad couldn't give. In practice, it works like this. When you achieve something and feel that automatic guilt, pause, close your eyes. Imagine you as a child excited about the achievement, looking at you, waiting for a reaction, and then give the reaction you needed. Say out loud if you can, or mentally, "I'm so proud of you, sweetie. You deserve this. It's okay to celebrate. Your joy is beautiful. You have every right to be happy." This will seem artificial at first, maybe even ridiculous. Your inner critic, which has the voice of your father, will protest. It will say that this is nonsense. It will try to make you stop. Do it anyway. With repetition, something begins to change. You are creating new neural connections. You are teaching your nervous system that joy, unadulterated happiness, can be safe. You are giving the wounded child inside of you what he or she always needed. The third tool is the deliberate practice of joy. Your dad taught you that joy, unadulterated happiness, is dangerous. You will teach yourself the opposite, deliberately, repeatedly, until the new programming replaces the old. Start small. Find something that gives you genuine pleasure. It can be anything: a song, a walk in Central Park, a morning coffee, a neglected hobby. And then practice being present in that pleasure, without guilt, without waiting for the other shoe to drop, without looking for problems. Just be there in the joy for a few minutes. In the beginning, it will be uncomfortable. Your nervous system will stir. It will seem wrong. It will seem dangerous. This is normal. It's your old conditioning resisting change. Keep going. Over time, you will realize that joy doesn't bring punishment, that you can be happy and nothing bad happens, that the pattern that your dad installed was a lie based on his pain, not on reality. The fourth tool is perhaps the most difficult. It's grief. You need to grieve for the dad that you needed and didn't have. This doesn't mean hating your real dad. It means recognizing that there was an ideal version of a father that you needed. A father who would celebrate your victories, who would be happy with your happiness, who would teach you that joy, unadulterated happiness, is your birthright. You didn't have that dad, and that hurts. Allowing yourself to feel that pain is an essential part of healing. Many people skip this part. They try to go straight to forgiveness, to overcoming, to moving on. But unprocessed pain doesn't disappear. It transforms into patterns, into sabotage, into the inability to be happy. Cry for the dad you needed. Feel anger for what you didn't receive. Recognize the emptiness that was left behind. Only after feeling completely can you begin to fill it. The fifth tool is the most counterintuitive. It's compassion for your dad. I'm not asking you to excuse his behavior. I'm not asking you to pretend it didn't hurt. I'm asking something much harder. That you see the pain behind the pain he caused. Your dad was a child too. A child who probably went through the same thing as you. Or worse. He had a little boy inside him who also wanted to be happy, who also was punished for it, who also learned that joy was wrong. The difference is that he never had access to information like this, never had the opportunity to understand what happened, never could do the work that you are doing now. He spent his entire life perpetuating a cycle that he didn't know how to break. That doesn't excuse it, but it does explain it. And when you can see your dad as a wounded man, who wounded because he didn't know any better, something shifts inside you. The anger doesn't vanish completely, but it loses some of its power. The resentment begins to loosen its grip. You start to realize you can break the cycle, that his wound doesn't have to be your permanent inheritance, that you can do differently. Now let me tell you what happens when you do this work. Carl Jung spent decades observing people who healed their childhood wounds, and what he saw was consistent. These people didn't become perpetually happy. They didn't turn into people without problems, without pain, without challenges. Life continued being life. But there was a fundamental difference. They could feel joy without guilt. They could celebrate silly wins without expecting punishment. They could be present in good moments, without the anxiety that something bad was coming next. They had recovered something that was stolen from them in childhood, the right to be happy. And here's what impresses me most. When these people had children, they didn't repeat the pattern. They could celebrate their children's joy, genuinely. They could rejoice in their children's small victories. They could be present in their happiness, without that shadow of envy or discomfort. The cycle stopped with them. This is what you can do, not just for you, but for all who come after. Every piece of healing you do is a piece of pain that will not be passed on. Your dad couldn't do this work. Maybe he didn't have the tools. Maybe he didn't have the awareness. Maybe the pain was too great and the defenses too strong, but you can. You are here. You are watching this. You are doing the work that already differentiates you. Now, I need to tell you about something that Carl Jung discovered, and that changes everything. He realized that children of parents who couldn't tolerate happiness developed a specific pattern that he called the forbidden success. It works like this. You grow up learning that your joy causes pain, that your small victories bother people, that your success threatens, so you internalize an invisible rule. I can't surpass my dad. This manifests in ways that seem to have no connection. You're afraid to make more money, CC, than he ever did, even if he's no longer present, even if he's passed away. The rule remains. You sabotage promotions, refuse opportunities, maintain an invisible ceiling over your success. You're afraid to be happier in relationships than he was. If his marriage was unhappy, a part of you believes you don't have a right to a better relationship. You choose problematic partners, create unnecessary drama. Guarantee that your love life has at least the same dose of suffering that his did. You're afraid to realize dreams that he didn't realize. If he had an abandoned dream, you unconsciously abandon yours too. It's a distorted form of loyalty, a solidarity with his frustration. This pattern is devastating because it operates completely in the unconscious. You don't consciously decide to sabotage your success. You simply do. And then you don't understand why you keep hitting the same ceiling, making the same mistakes, stopping at the same point. Now that you know, you can start to observe. Ask yourself, in what areas of my life do I limit myself for no apparent reason? Where is the invisible ceiling of my success? What am I not allowing myself to have or be? The answers usually point to the forbidden success, to rules that you absorbed from your dad's inability to tolerate that you were happier, more successful, more fulfilled than he was. The good news is, unconscious rules lose power when they become conscious. The simple act of seeing the pattern already starts to weaken it. Another thing that Carl Jung observed is that children of parents like this frequently develop what he called existential guilt complex. It's a guilt that's not connected to anything specific you've done. It's a guilt for existing, for taking up space, for having needs, for being alive. This guilt comes from years, absorbing the message, that your presence, was especially your happy presence, was a burden, an inconvenience, an offense. Children are emotional sponges. They absorb what's in the environment, without a filter. If the environment said that your joy was a problem, you internalized that you are a problem. This existential guilt manifests in various ways. You apologize excessively for things that don't need an apology, for taking up space, for having opinions, for existing. You minimize your own needs, act as if your needs are less important than everyone else's. Always put yourself last. Feel selfish for wanting anything for yourself. You carry an undefined weight, a feeling that something's wrong with you, but you don't know what. An impression that you're in debt to the world, but you don't know why. None of this is true. You are not a problem. Your existence is not a burden. Your needs are just as valid as those of any other human being. But unlearning this guilt takes time, requires repetition, requires that you consciously, repeatedly tell yourself, I have the right to exist. I have the right to have needs. I have the right to be happy. In the beginning, it will seem like a lie. Your conditioning will resist. The voice of your internalized dad will protest. Keep going anyway. Modern neuroscience confirms what Carl Jung intuited decades ago. The brain changes with repetition. New connections are formed, old patterns weaken. It's possible to rewrite the programming. But you need to do the work. Nobody can do it for you. Carl Jung had a saying about parents and children that stays with me. He said, nothing influences a child more than the unlived life of the parents. Your dad couldn't live fully, couldn't feel joy without guilt, couldn't celebrate without shame, and this inability overflowed to you. But you have something that he maybe didn't have. Awareness, access to information, tools. You can do differently. Every time you allow yourself to be happy, you're healing. Not only yourself, you're healing the wound. That came before you. You're breaking a chain that crosses generations. Every time you celebrate a small victory without guilt, you're saying to the universe that the cycle stops here, that you won't pass on what you received, that your children, if you have them, will grow up knowing that their joy is welcome. That is power. That is transformation. That is what Carl Jung called individuation. The process of becoming who you really are, free from the wounds and programming that you received. You are on the path. The very fact that you've watched this far, well, it shows something. Now it's about continuing, but one day at a time, one choice at a time, one permission slip for joy at a time. The question I leave you with is this. Are you ready to reclaim your birthright to be happy? Are you ready to stop carrying a pain that was never yours to begin with? Are you ready to break a cycle that's been passed down for generations? If this video resonated with you, if you saw yourself in this story, it's no coincidence. There's a reason you're here. Subscribe to this channel because everything we produce is about this process of healing and self-discovery. A journey that Carl Jung himself explored deeply through his work on the shadow and the process of individuation. And tell me in the comments, what was the moment you realized that your dad couldn't handle your joy, your unadulterated happiness? Your story might just help others who are going through the same thing. Maybe it was a silly win he diminished. Maybe it was a good grade at school that was met with indifference. Share your experience. Thank you for watching until the end. It shows me that you are committed to your own healing, your own journey towards wholeness. A journey Jung believed was essential for a fulfilling life. Until the next video. And remember, your joy is your birthright. No one, not even your father, had the right to take it from you. Your dad might not have been able to give you permission to be happy. Give it to yourself and unlock that potential. Embrace your true self.